Hey guys, this is Lala Legacy, and welcome back to another episode of SeaBed. So, let's jump right back in. Most of them seem to be related to illnesses, including The Ugly Duckling, a book most hospitals had on their shelves. I've spotted a few thinner volumes, some newer novels, as I inspected one book after another. And then, when I'd forgotten what I was looking for, I suddenly found my notebook. I gave it a thorough look. It had the familiar brown leather cover. Upon closer I don't know why it's so hard for me to read this today. Upon closer examination, I realized the cover was no cheap knockoff one could see on most notebooks. This was likely the real deal. I sat down in the cane chair and opened up the notebook. I had already discussed it with Mayuko. She said that it was addressed directly to me, so I was free to do whatever I wanted with it. Upon flipping to the first page, I saw some handwritten letters that said they were neat and easy to read, in no way inferior to print. As I examined the date, I realized that a few pages between the first and the cover were torn out. They were removed with such precision I didn't even notice at first. I quickly flipped to the end of the notebook to check if no other pages were missing. I found myself intrigued by the missing contents, but the entries were all dated, so I figured I could just start reading from wherever I wanted. October 6th, 1979. Contrary to the forecast, the weather was beautiful today. The sky was blue, with only a few light clouds to liven up its colors. To be completely honest, I spent pretty much every sports festival like that, even when it was the festival of another school. A nearby elementary school was holding its sports festival today. An upbeat song, the kind you usually hear during running competitions, began playing, followed by a sudden gunshot. Takako was excitedly looking at it from atop a jungle gym. "Look, it started!" she addressed me. "I can see that." Following her gaze, I saw a crowd of parents and children dashing through the field, stirring up a cloud of dust as they ran. A teacher's narration of the competition could be heard through the speaker atop a tall pole, decorated with flags. Her loud voice was practically drowning out the music. I suddenly remembered how hot it was. The wind was stronger at the top of the slide, and we were in the shadow of a large tree, but due to how sunny it had been lately, this week's temperatures exceeded the average by a wide margin. I shifted my gaze to the book I'd been holding, and tried once again to ignore the heat. I was here because I promised Takako to come if the weather was fine. Back when I made that promise, I already knew about the weather forecast and had completely forgotten about my sports festival curse. "The view's great from here, let's watch it together!" "We had a sports festival at our school last week. Is it really that entertaining to watch another school participate in one?" "Watching and participating are both fun in their own way." "Really?" "As a participant, I was too busy being nervous and excited to really take it all in, and before long, the whole thing was over. Being on the sidelines lets you calmly observe everything." I mean, even if you were in your house, you'd hear the sounds and get curious about how it's going, no?" As we continued chatting atop the slide, Takako's friend, who went to buy juice earlier, came back. It was someone Takako met in her 4th year of school when she joined the basketball club. I saw her a couple times myself. Takako shouted something down to her, then turned back to me. "She wants all 3 of us to play, what do you think?" "I'll be reading my book here." "Alright, then we'll have to hang around here." Takako slid down the slide. After that, I spent some time reading. Once I finished the chapter I'd been on, I closed the book and brushed some sweat off my forehead. Below me, Takako, her 2 friends, and some boy I'd never seen before were playing kick tennis. I had no idea where they got that volleyball. A gallop song burst forth from the speakers. It seemed like they started the ball toss game. For a while, I gazed absent-mindedly at the white and red balls dancing in the sky before realizing that I was feeling even hotter than before. The mild autumn breeze helped cool off my sweat-covered skin a little. I looked at the scoreboard and saw that the red team had 419 points, while the white team had 503. Just then, a person appeared from the window and changed the red team's score to 460. On the track, they were still busy with the ball tossing game. I have trouble understanding how the scoring in that game is supposed to work. The clock between the scores was pointing at 11:45. It was almost time for lunch, and as I realized that, I smelled something good. I looked around the school grounds and spotted some of the families already helping themselves to an early treat. The gallop song ended, and the ball baskets were lowered. The person on the speaker began counting each ball as they were being tossed high in the air. As I observed the white and red balls painting wide arcs in the air, I felt the slide shake. A moment later, I heard some wails from below. Looking down, I spotted Takako clutching her head and writhing on the ground. I pushed the book back into my pocket and descended the stairs of the slide to give Takako a closer look. She was surrounded by her two friends and the boy that I didn't know. "Are you okay?" I asked one of her friends. Takako raised her upper body, Takako raised her upper body with a groan, her hands still on the back of her head. "Does it hurt?" It doesn't." I noticed something red seeping through her fingers. "You're bleeding." I realized there were also some red stains on her back and what looked like a puddle of blood about the size of my palm on the ground where she lay. One of the adults that saw the whole thing called an ambulance, and it arrived before we knew it. I ended up having to accompany Takako to the hospital. Takako was lying limp on the ambulance's bed with a towel on her head. The adult who sat next to us was listening to how she got hurt. From what I could piece together, it appeared she jumped up and clutched on the aerial ladder that was pretty high up, but her fingers slipped. She ended up turning upside down in the air and fell to the ground, hitting her head directly. Your stupidity knows no bounds. I'm bleeding all over. That's because you cut your head. I'm starting to feel the pain. Takako told the adult her home's phone number. Then she proceeded to look at the ceiling of the ambulance car. She couldn't move her head, so only her eyes darted anxiously from one spot to another. I might die! Relax. Worst case scenario, you'll get a few stitches. Her eyes stopped darting around and focused on me. Will you visit my grave if I die? I suppose I'd have to. I'm going to be lonely, so come visit me every day. No way, that sounds like a pain. Then at least drop by every once in a while. I suppose that could work. After we reached the hospital, the doctors brought Takako to a room on a stretcher. I spent a few moments staring at the closed doors in the empty hallway, then sat down on the bench in front of the room. After a bit of time, I heard a sharp wail and some protests about needles or whatnot. Wait, I'm not ready yet! After a few minutes, I heard some irritated adult voices saying she wasn't the only patient here. Yet, even after that, the sounds of struggle wouldn't cease. I strained my ears and listened in. Judging from the voices and sounds, I guessed that she fought back against the nurses and doctors as they tried to hold her down. But as she was finally subdued and the needle came closer, she gave up and stopped struggling. An anesthetic must have worked as I couldn't hear anything anymore. Takako's mother came to the hospital a few minutes later. She must have come directly from work as she was still in her suit. After I explained to her everything that happened, she looked around and entered Takako's room. I looked over her shoulder as she began speaking to the doctor to see Takako lying on the bed with her back to me in the center of the room. The doctor leaned over her and sewed her wound with something that looked like a nipper before I even had the chance to react. The silver tray that Takako was leaning her head on was filled with crimson blood. You can stand up now. As the doctor said that, Takako began to slowly rise to her feet. The nurse wiped the blood off Takako's face, while the latter kept staring into space with an empty expression. The doctor told Takako's mother not to scratch or wash the wound until it completely closes up. He then turned to Takako and repeated the same thing. After Takako's mother thanked the doctor, I helped Takako climb into her mother's car while she stayed behind for a bit more. Likely due to the anesthetic, Takako leaned against the rear seat's door and stopped moving altogether, almost like a squashed cockroach. "Your head looks weird," I told her. The gauze bandages covering her wound were supported by a white net-looking thing that coiled around her entire head. It opened up at the top, making her hair stick out like a flower bulb. Takako simply let out a heavy sigh in response. "Are you nervous?" I gave her a hard look. After a few moments of silence, she opened her mouth. "Everyone's gonna make fun of me at school tomorrow." I think the fact that an ambulance car showed up at a sports festival is a much bigger event as far as anyone is concerned, or everyone is concerned. Takako came to school the next day with that net still on her head, and everyone started calling her the flower bulb. However, she could finally take it off the next week. She began bragging and showing her stitches to everyone as though it was some horrible wound. I felt my head ache as I finished reading the entry. The pain itself was hardly anything noteworthy, but the way it prickled behind my behind my eyes was annoying. It reminded me of having a fishbone stuck in your throat. I began massaging my eyes with my fingers when I suddenly realized Sanaya was up and looking at me. "Did I surprise you?" she asked. "No." My muscles tensed up at the idea of being observed without my knowledge, but luckily only my left hand, the one that held the notebook, twitched. I raised the notebook higher and showed it to Sanai. "I was reading the diary." "Ah, the notebook from yesterday. Did you read it without permission?" She glared at me with accusing eyes. I waved my hand in denial, which kind of reminded me of those comedians on TV. Disregarding that thought, I proceeded to explain myself. "Looks like this thing really was addressed to me." "How can you tell?" "The diary belonged to my friend. It's pretty ancient, but there's stuff about me written in it. It doesn't belong to some random stranger. I'm sure she sent it to me so I would read it." I opened the book on the first page and showed it to Sanai. She looked at it through her glasses, but seemed unable to make out the letters from that distance. "What is it about?" She gave up and leaned back against her pillow. "A story about how an ambulance car came to a sports festival." "What on earth happened?" I cracked my head at the playground and ended up needing stitches. I carried the cane chair closer to her bed. "The playground? So you didn't get hurt during the actual event?" I pulled my hair aside and showed Sanai the back of my head. "Is it still there?" I think I can see a little bump or something." I knew it would never disappear." I let go of my hair and sat back down into the chair. "Did you remember that event?" "I'm not sure. I vaguely recalled attending it when I read through the diary, but..." "I see." I realized the pain was gone. I pressed my fingers against my eyes again. Sanai looked at me, so I hurriedly let go of them and opened the notebook. As I flipped through a few pages, Sanai shifted her attention to the record player. I did the same. Did you actually look for the record of the song?" I asked her. By now, the song had long since come to an end and the record player was dead silent. The diary must have captured my attention so much that I didn't even notice. "I got curious about which song it was when you mentioned it during your story. Did I get it right?" "Yeah, hearing it again is really nostalgic. Can I raise the volume a little?" "Of course." I got off the chair and turned up the volume knob. I ended up chatting with Sanai until dinner. The windows didn't rattle too much that day. The view outside looked still and serene, with no wind. It reminded me of a picture you'd see on a postcard. Only a single dried up leaf kept fluttering on the tip of a branch. It was as though it was trying to fight against the onset of winter despite looking like it would fall apart at any second. After finishing the conversation, I left Sanai's room with notebook in hand. I had no other plans for the day, so I decided to return to my room. I sat down in the chair and was about to continue reading the diary when I remembered that odd pain behind my eyes. Remnants of it still seemed to linger in my mind. Rushing things would have been pointless, so I chose to close the notebook for now. I shut my eyes and leaned against the chair with all my weight. The pain vanished. It happened earlier when I closed my eyes or shortly afterwards. Or it happened either, sorry. Now that the pain was gone, I felt cold. An unpleasant chill ran down my spine. I opened my eyes to check if the window was closed. I couldn't see it from my current position, so I stood up and walked closer. After pulling on it a few times, I fastened the latch. As I reclined in my seat, I saw the window of my second-floor room through the front glass. To the right of my room was Sanai's, but her window was located on the other wall, so I couldn't see it from here. I sat up and opened the glove compartment. Inside, I found a pair of sunglasses, some pocket tissues, and a soft-cover book. I had nothing else to do, so I took out the sunglasses and tried putting them on. They had thick black frames. I turned the rearview mirror toward myself. A small bag dangling from it touched my hand. I looked at it. It was made of some kind of thin material, like Japanese paper. There seemed to be something inside. As I placed it on my palm and held it up to the light, I saw something purple. That must have been the origin of the lavender smell in the car. Upon drawing it closer to my nose, I realized I was right. What are you doing? The door on the side of the driver's seat suddenly opened, startling me. Mayuko climbed into the car. How does it look? I asked her from an angle and pointed at the sunglasses. I feel like some thinner frames would suit you better. Can we really just go outside like this? I have permission. Oh, that's good to hear. Upon checking that the ignition key was in its place, Mayuko promptly turned it. The car jerked for a moment and the engine whirred to life with a low roar. Mayuko, who's the one giving you permission? The head doctor of the sanatorium. And when they're not present, the responsibility falls on the head nurse. Isn't that you? I gave her a suspicious look. That's right. I'll be in a whole heap of trouble if you disappear on me, so be sure to stick close. You don't need to tell me that. Even if you find something interesting, don't wander off without first telling me. I'll accompany you if need be. How old do you think I am? Mayuko extended an arm to fix the position of the rearview mirror. In it, I saw the reflection of a woman with twin tails and sunglasses. I'm looking good. I'm really worried. Mayuko fastened her seatbelt. I returned the sunglasses to the glove compartment and fastened my seatbelt too. Did you fasten your seatbelt? Yes. We're off then. It's Sanai! Probably drawn by the sound of the engine, Sanai was looking at us through the corridor's window. She returned my way with one of her own. Mayuko changed gears and began going in reverse. She then switched gears again and turned the steering wheel to the right towards the gate. Meanwhile, I could hear the sharp screeching of the tires. Soon enough, I lost sight of Sanai. You think Sanai will be fine on her own? Yes. What happens if she gets hungry? I prepared a meal for her. Besides, there are all sorts of things left in the fridge. I didn't know she could cook. You're going to cook for us tomorrow, right? I guess I better do my best not to disappoint everyone. Please do. Okay. The general store had a narrow parking area for about 4 cars, but it was already taken by a white truck bearing the store's name, a light green 2-door Datsun, that looked more like a toy than a real car, and an elaborately decorated Toyota Crown. After changing gears multiple times, Mayuko finally managed to fit our car into the last open space left. This is a different place than usual. The white concrete walls of the store loomed above the rest of the buildings. A series of large orange letters at the front spelled out its name. Most of the other buildings in the area were built in traditional Japanese style, but this one looked more like the kind of highway motel you'd see in the US. Mayuko closed the door and stretched her shoulders. But that is all the time that I have for this episode, guys. So if you liked it, please give it a big thumbs up down below. And if you haven't already, subscribe. By subscribing, you're becoming part of a legacy. I love you guys so much, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye!